You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to another Colts Blue Zone podcast, the final such pod of the 2022 NFL offseason as training camp comes next week. And boy, you'll blink your eyes and it'll be January and hopefully playoff football here in Indianapolis. Alongside Mike Chappell and Joe Hopkins, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you. We are, as we tape this pod on Thursday, 52 days away from the Colts season opener. And boy, in Houston, in Jacksonville to start us off. And we'll get plenty into the start to the season later, at later dates. Just cropped up in my mind how important that early stretch, Mike, is going to be, though.
Tuesday.
What?
They start Tuesday.
Tuesday?
It's unbelievable.
Practice. Yes, this Tuesday. They report.
They report in practice, and gosh, it just seems like a few days ago that we were sitting, not a few days ago, but we were talking to Chris Ballard about what the heck went wrong. Mm-hmm. Because a lot went wrong. But
Plenty did.
That's the crazy thing and the good thing about the NFL is it recycles so quick that you can put bad stuff behind you.
Got to flush it because the next day something's happening. Something important's happening. We will continue our training camp preview. We did offense last week. We'll do defense this week. Plenty to break down there, but we'll touch on the news both around the league and here in Indianapolis first before getting to that preview. And here in Indy, kind of the talk of the town when it comes to Colts this week. Just the last gasp before the training camp begins was it was an article that Bob Kraftwitz of The Athletic put out. And the main question he asks was, does Andrew Luck belong in the Colts Ring of Honor? And I'll encourage you to read it yourself for sure, because Bob does great work, and all the folks at The Athletic do. If you listen to Zach Kiefer of The Athletic's podcast on Andrew Luck, that I think we mentioned in our last pod, Bob did very fine work in this one. He made the case that in a way that Andrew Luck does not deserve a spot in the Ring of Honor. Chap, I know that you tweeted out something different yourself. Explain your thoughts on Andrew Luck's spot in the Ring of Honor, potential spot in the Ring of Honor, his deservedness or undeservedness, as the case may be.
Yeah, just look who is in there, and not to disparage any of those guys, but yes, Andrew Luck deserves to be in the Ring of Honor, but not right now. I think there needs to be more time. And besides, let's keep it. Get in line. There's other guys, if you're going to address that, in my mind, before him. Dallas Clark, he's probably a fringe. Bob Sanders, he may be a fringe player because of the time he missed, but there's a Lombardi Trophy in town because of Bob Sanders. You can, the other guys, this, that, and the other, but because of Bob Sanders. So, and I've banged the drum forever, and I still will. Is either Jeff Herrod or Eugene Daniel need to be in. There was football before Peyton Manning. I saw it. I watched it. It wasn't always pretty. Mm-hmm. But you can have really good players on bad teams. But yes, Andrew Luck, yes, he does. I think the thing in the sentiment is, boy, you put him in next year and you're going to have some boos. And you don't like to have a Ring of Honor guy booed.
Right. So,
which would be understandable, and you don't want that. But yes, he's the Ring of Honor guy. For whatever it was, 6 years that he played, he was a top, 5-6 quarterback.
Yeah.
He was. He just was. And we always talked about Peyton Manning early on covering up deficiencies. Andrew Luck carried that franchise to 3 straight 11-5. So yes, he does. He deserves to be in, just not yet. Not right now.
Joe?
It's funny, we were talking about this, me and a couple other people on the web team the other day, and at first, I had mixed feelings about it, but then the more we talked about it, the more I talked myself into it. Matt Adams on the web team brought up the good point that Jim Harbaugh's in the Ring of Honor. Well, if Jim Harbaugh's in it, Andrew Luck certainly deserves to be in it.
The problem you run into is you're talking different eras and different reasons. Jim Harbaugh's in for like a year and a half of extraordinary play, and they needed to put somebody up there, in all honesty.
I think the bar has been risen since
a bunch.
But I like that you brought up Bob Sanders, because they're pretty much very similar in a lot of ways. Careers cut short because of injury, but boy, were they spectacular when they did play. So I think Andrew Luck does deserve to be in there, and I think we all agree that T.Y. Hilton at some point will deserve to be in the Ring of Honor. I think it'd be kind of cool to see Ty and Andrew maybe go in at the same time because they're so responsible for each other's careers. I don't believe T.Y. Hilton has had a 1,000-yard season without Andrew Luck.
Good point.
I can double check that, but both of them very responsible for each other's success. So I think it'd be nice for them to go in together. But Andrew Luck does deserve to be in.
I think one of Bob Kravitz's main points that you brought up was the bar has risen. Bar has risen right now for what should be for induction into the Ring of Honor. Before, Eric Dickerson, Jim Harbaugh, they didn't exactly lead to. They weren't here for that long. But
you could argue Marshall Faulk as well.
Yeah. But
he really took off with the Rams.
Mm-hmm, but you needed to put somebody in there at the time.
Correct.
So and they were great players.
The 12th man.
Yes, the 12th man is in there.
Which has since been altered.
Yes. I will say I find it hard to believe that the Ring of Honor will not include Andrew Luck at some point because of his contributions to the franchise and how he left the franchise from a fan's perspective, I think, on somewhat sour terms. But for Jim Irsay to still pay him the $25 million he was owed, he left on good terms with the people in the building. It seems like, even though they wish that he could have stayed, he would have stayed. But like you said, Mike, you cannot throw Andrew Luck out there at Lucas Oil Stadium and have boos coming down. And that's what that's what would happen right now. It would. I don't even know if I don't think it would be more than 50%. If this was happening in Philadelphia, where I grew up, it would be 75% booze easily.
I think it'd be 75-25 cheers, maybe a tad more. I really do.
And I do think that would be flipped, like I said, in a place in Philadelphia, just from what happened, from how it all went down, and for where the franchise is right now. The franchise needs to get out of this quarterback funk that it's in. They need a future quarterback. They need a distinct person to point to say that chapter of the Colts era, the Indianapolis Colts, is over. And they haven't passed it yet, the post-Luck era. They need to move from the post-Luck era into the Arch Manning era, or whatever it's going to be next. You know, as long as we are stuck, Mike, in this part of the Colts, in this state of the Colts franchise, I can't see Luck getting into the Ring of Honor anytime.
Because a lot of people still blame Luck for them being here.
Exactly.
And he played a part. Again, we can parse words. Did he retire or did he quit on his team? It just depends on how you want to look at it. He's gone, but at some point the team has got to move on, and it's hard to say that they've tried. I don't. It's hard to analyze it because how many really strong opportunities have they had to get up and move and get a top 5 quarterback? Maybe if Luck had chosen to retire in, I don't know, February instead of 3 weeks before the season, perhaps that season. But one thing, and again, I think there still are some hurt feelings. I still go back to the retirement day or that night after the Bears preseason game, and we've got Irsay and Chris Ballard and Frank Reich sitting there listening, and there was I just believe there's some anger there. There had to be. At the same time, we were in Jim Irsay's office during the draft. A lot of us in the media were, and it's a beautiful office with Ringo's drums and all these guitars. But on his back, the back wall, he's got all of these helmets and things, and the Lombardi Trophy. Mm-hmm. But the 3 prominent helmets he's got, sort of centerpieced, are Peyton, Johnny Unitas, and Andrew Luck, 19, 18, and 12. So at some level, he's gotten past it. And keep in mind, there's only one person that decides on the Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
So yeah, he will be on it. When, I don't know. Again, I didn't even think about T.Y. Hilton. I might put T.Y. in before I put Andrew Luck in. Mm-hmm. But because of the length of the career and all that. But again, if you're going to put Bob Sanders in, because you are, and if you're going to put Dallas Clark in, put him in before Luck as well. But yeah, he's a Ring of Honor guy. He is
the greatest kicker in NFL history. Adam Vinatieri might have a spot.
I hadn't thought that. Yeah, I'd put him in there before Luck.
Probably,
I would. Mm-hmm. So that's. I mean, he's. It's hard for people to realize that he played more of his career in Indy than he did New England. Now, right. He had, the
bigger kicks, the Super Bowl
right.
championship.
He sort of set his foundation in there.
Right.
But he became he set the longest or the consecutive streak of 44 kicks as a Colt, and he was he's the all-time scoring leader here and in the league. So yeah, I'd put him in before I put Andrew in. I would.
Yep. And while we're discussing Adam Vinatieri, his son, A.J. Vinatieri, pride of Zionsville, the Eagles, has committed to...
Chirp, chirp.
That's right, Ball State. Going up to Muncie, going to play his college ball there for Coach Mike New and the Cardinals. And
Did he decommit from UMass?
Yes,
That's what I thought.
UMass is what he gave his initial commit to. But yeah, he's staying close to home, so it'll be nice. He made a couple big kicks for the Eagles on their. They had a couple good recent trips through the postseason here in Indiana, and so best of luck to AJ at Ball State. One more piece of news to get through before we get to the Colts defense, and that is from an ESPN report that Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, just breaking today, have agreed to a 5-year extension that'll net Kyler $230.5 million.
230.
Yes, massive. Remember when we were talking about $120 million to Andrew Luck being the record setting? That was like yesterday.
And think of the quarterbacks coming up.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson's going to want more
next.
than that.
You think he took notice of that?
Yeah, I think he gets more than that.
I saw a report that he was in the building today after staying away.
He's like, "Hey guys, how you doing?"
I'm sure that's what he was waiting for. The Kyler Murray shoot a drop, and then Lamar's going to get his because he's accomplished a lot more than Murray has.
Mm-hmm.
I look at Kyler Murray, and it's yes, the quarterbacks get too much blame and credit. He's 23-1 as a starter, and he looked not very good at the end of last year.
No, like we were just saying when we came in here, if you thought Carson Wentz didn't look good, Kyler Murray lost to Carson Wentz down the stretch, and then in the playoffs, he was just bad. He was not good.
But this is where you are in the NFL when you get who you think is the guy, you got to pay him. I mean, some teams don't with the Sam Darnolds where you come to your senses and he's not the guy. But if he's the guy, you got to pay him. And nowadays, again, behind closed doors, GMs and owners are just cussing out the Browns, just letting them have it because they have set the bar. Keep in mind, I've always considered Deshaun Watson a top 5 quarterback. Just forget all the other stuff. Just as a quarterback, they were 4-12 his last year in Houston.
Yep.
But when you get to that's the market and that's why you look at again the market with I think the cap explodes next year. I think it is. Receivers are getting $25 million. Quentin's going to get $18 to $20 million. But quarterbacks, holy smokes, it's incredible. And if I'm Lamar Jackson, like you say, next in line, $50 million? I don't know.
Might be Joe. This reported deal with Murray, it makes him the second highest paid quarterback on a year-to-year basis. He's only behind Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is $50.3 million. And
shorter deal.
Yeah, it is. And Murray's, I think, is $46.1 million, which it's funny to me that Deshaun Watson's was $46 million flat. So it's $100,000 more per year. So he just wanted that was important, obviously, to Murray. And like you mentioned, with Lamar Jackson coming up next, it's going to be important to him to go one step further higher than that.
It won't be one.
No, it'll be more than that.
Right.
And it's like a year ago, we were talking about the Patrick Mahomes extension just being ludicrous money. But his is only $45 million. We're going to look at that in 2 years and be like, boy, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes on chump change. That's how it works in the NFL, especially with quarterback contracts. It just goes up. And as Mike says, when the salary cap explodes, it's going to explode even more.
Yeah, I think Lamar Jackson has played this pretty well by kind of waiting out, letting the market costs go up and up. The key number with Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson, though, is guaranteed money.
Was it 160?
160. Deshaun Watson's getting all $230 million. So that
again, more cuss words aimed at the Browns.
It's crazy.
Yep. That's wild. So I don't think we'll see another contract like Deshaun Watson's, especially depending on how this goes in Cleveland, which I just have a feeling it's not going to be how the Browns fans hope it does. But talking about Kyler Murray's $46 million a year. What's Matt Ryan getting? 50 over 2 years?
53 over 2 years.
53 over 2 years makes Matt Ryan look like a bargain.
Now that contract was done several years ago.
And I get
still.
Ryan's older, and I'd much rather have Kyler Murray on the Colts than I would Matt Ryan.
I'm not sure.
You're not
Chap's
sure?
not positive.
I'm not sold on Murray. You may be right, and he's such a unique player.
For the long term, I think it's an interesting debate for 2022. Who would you rather have to take this team? But I think for the long term, Kyler Murray gives your team a higher ceiling for the next 4 or 5 years. But anyway, it's just crazy to see these deals, and the price is just going to keep going up.
Yep, no end in sight. And so if you have your quarterback, you're going to pay your quarterback.
Like I say, Joe Burrow.
Yep.
And all these guys. Has Josh Allen gotten his yet?
Yeah, he did.
I think he did.
Or Herbert get his yet?
Herbert hasn't gotten his. It's Burrow, it's Herbert, it's Lamar Jackson all getting theirs.
The 230 looks really cool, but like Joe said, it's how much guaranteed do you get with any player? With Quentin, okay, it looks good. You're a $20 million guard if that's what it is, but how much do you get guaranteed? Because that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Because they put all these agents and teams put these funny years and numbers, and maybe the last 2 years are just fake. The New Orleans quarterback,
Jameis Winston?
No, Taysom Hill. They did something where he was like a $100 million quarterback, and it was just bogus. So how much you guarantee, and that's all that matters.
Let's get to our training camp preview with the Colts defense. They will be out at Grand Park very shortly. Reporting next Tuesday, first practice next Wednesday. Chance to see them out there. Most practices are at noon. There's one practice that is a night practice that is, I believe, a week from Saturday. The first Saturday in camp. And then some of them later in camp are going to be at slightly different times, earlier or later.
I think they're all noon, the night one, and then the last day of practice is like 10, I think.
There you go. So noon is the time, basically.
Right.
But you can check online, Colts.com, for specific theme days, specific times, just to make sure you are up to date. The defensive side of the ball for the Colts, I think there's a lot of optimism over there heading into this camp just because of the changes from last year to this year. Some changes you don't know if they're going to be for the better, like Gus Bradley versus Matt Eberflus. Other changes you have to be optimistic they're for the better, like bringing in Stephon Gilmore instead of Xavier Rhodes, having Yannick Ngakoue on the edge, giving you arguably the best pass rusher you've had since Robert Mathis was here. So just an overarching view of the defense as we go into Camp Chap. I think that this unit, you would think it has the potential to be one of the better ones in the NFL because they have Pro Bowlers at all three levels. They have a coach that has in the past been able to coach up one of the best defenses in the league. And it's a matter of getting everybody on the same page and staying healthy, as it always is in the NFL.
It's funny when there's so much change, then what people tend to do, fans and media at some level, is you trash the previous regime. It wasn't good enough. Keep in mind, I am convinced that had Matt Eberflus not earned the Bears head coaching job, he's back. I really believe that. Now, they would have gutted his staff, I believe. But
didn't they fire the D-line coach before Eberflus left?
Right. And you could – he was great on on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Baker?
Brian Baker.
But I think they were concerned that they didn't see enough development from Quiddy and the rest of them. So that's whatever. But during Flus's career, 4 years, they were number 2 in takeaways.
That's pretty good.
And they were number 4 against the run.
That's pretty good.
It was. Now they were, I think they were last in the league or worst 3 in quarterback percentage, but we saw that during Dungy's career with that cover too. Is it you give up that stuff, but they did good things, but they just never got their pass rush solved. They were like 18th in 4 years with Flus, and that's the chicken or the egg. Is it because you didn't coach them up, or you didn't give me guys to coach up?
And in those scenarios, when you get so many turnovers, you don't have the sacks. I guess what I'm trying to say is making key plays at key moments in the game becomes so important. And if you don't have the horses on the defensive line to do that, you get the Baltimore game last year where you're up by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but then Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews strike and they touchdown 2-point conversion, touchdown 2-point conversion. Yeah, just one play. One stop on a touchdown. One stop on a 2-point conversion.
Stop 1 2-point conversion.
Exactly, and then it goes to the what's it called? The overtime and Baltimore wins. Boom, like that. Game's over. So you can live with a pass rush that doesn't always get home if the pass rush can get home in the fourth quarter. But it just couldn't at the most needed times for the Colts.
They banked on. They didn't re-sign Houston. They didn't re-sign Janico.
Right.
Banking on the young kids, and the young kids just didn't come through.
Right. So they're optimistic this year that a young man by the name of Yannick Ngakoue will be a big part in taking this defensive line where it needs to be. A threat late in the fourth quarter that can stop an opposing team on a drive when you're up by 4 points, 5 points, 7 points, whatever it might be. And Joe, I think for me, my first memory of Yannick Ngakoue is here at Lucas Oil Stadium, sacking Jacoby Brissett like 10 times alongside with the Jacksonville defense.
That was the 11-sack game, was it, or whatever?
Yeah, it was ludicrous.
I think I was at that game.
It's just like, I remember that game.
That was a poor game to get tickets to.
Yeah, exactly. But all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Who's this guy with a weird name, Yannick Ngakoue?" But he's established himself as a consistent guy in the NFL more than anything else. Joe, he gets 8 sacks every year of his career. He might not get the one that's 17 sacks that T.J. Watt gets, but you need to take a step forward, and getting consistent pass rush from the edge is something the Colts have not had since Robert Math. Well, I'll say that.
Just in Houston's first year.
His first year, yeah. Because his second year, he had great games, but then was completely gone for others. So the hope is that Yannick Ngakoue can be a steady presence on the edge that they have not had for some time.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he stays healthy, you can pretty much take it to the bank. He's going to get you at least 8 sacks. I think most of his career was like 12.5 during his second year with Jacksonville. He got back up to 10 last year.
You'd take that without even batting an eye.
Oh, yeah.
Got back up to 10 with the Raiders. And he doesn't have to even be like the guy, like the only guy. DeForest Buckner is still the best defensive lineman on this team, and I'm really excited about Kwity Paye in year 2. They sunk a first-round pick in him. He showed the flashes last year. I think he can take a big step forward. So Yannick Ngakoue just has to come up with those sacks in the fourth quarter that were absent last year, and I think he'll be able to do that in a role that he's familiar with Gus Bradley.
So they, of course, in past under Matt Eberflus really did like to rotate on the defensive line, and most defensive coordinators do this in order to keep guys fresh late into games and make sure that pass rush is still going in the fourth quarter. You got Ngakoue, you got Kwity Paye going into his second year. You also have Dayo Odinigbo going into his second year, and Taekwon Lewis entering his 5th year in the league. He was just re-signed as a free agent this past offseason, and it was really Chap coming on. We've talked about Taekwon on this pod before throughout the offseason about who they bring back, who they don't bring back, and key moments from last year. And talking about the Taekwon Lewis interception and fumble was really a turning point to not just the game against the Titans, but could have been the Colts season as well, where things just started going downhill. Well, things took a downhill turn, at least, that they were unable to climb back from, I should say. So those are really your top 4 guys, and guys that are most likely to make the roster. When you go into the year looking like this, there's there's certainly younger guys and guys that haven't proven themselves in the league, 3 of them, and only 1 real veteran that has. It's certainly not going to be the deepest when you look around the NFL, but I think it's a step in the right direction, like I've said, in terms of better than past years and guys that you really want to develop into something more there.
Yeah, because they let Muhammad go.
Right.
And he's what signed with Flus in Chicago, I believe.
I believe so.
Teray as well.
Teray as well. Which
is he in San Francisco? Did he sign
yes.
there?
Yeah.
And it's hard to say you should have brought either one of them back. People argued last year that by sticking with Muhammad, that it kept other players from getting their snaps. Well, Muhammad earned it.
He did,
and the other guys didn't.
Exactly. So
yeah, this is going to really test the depth, because they have always tried to rotate. They always want to have 8 or 9 quality players so that you can rotate. And for that to happen, some of these guys that people aren't familiar with are going to have to emerge.
Yeah, Mike and I have been more on the Dayo Odinigbo train, as we've seen in the past couple weeks, as we've talking about breakout players and all that. Joe has been more on the Kwity Paye train. And Joe, I think one stat that you list here is like, I think it's very very telling for your position, saying that of Quity's 4 sacks last year, all of them came in the last 8 games. So he clearly got better or got a little bit more comfortable in his skin down the stretch of last season. For Dayo, for us, would be, while he was never fully back himself from the Achilles. Yeah, sure, he's good enough to be on the field, but now after a full year away from that injury, you figure he has the same explosion that he had in the past. So those two guys, one of them emerging as an upper level defensive talent, can really be a difference in whether this defense is a top 12 team in the NFL or a top 4 team in the NFL.
And for the record, I'm excited about what Dio can do as well.
You're only allowed to be excited about one.
It's
Joe.
not
You
an
can't be
either
both.
or thing. I like them both out here. I just think Kwity, will be the starter, and so he'll get more of an opportunity.
Yes.
What's that?
At a new position, he's flipping sides.
He's flipping sides. He's going to play the big end in that defense. That's really the position that both Dio and Taekwon Lewis fit as well. When you look at kind of body types and fit, the only other guy that kind of fits as that smaller, speedier Leo position is Ben Banigou, and boy, I don't think we can count on that.
It's amazing when I did my breakdown and I put these guys on here. I had to do a double take that he's still on the roster. So I think they're taking the approach that you carry 90, and let's see what he's got. It's a new scheme, it's a new coach, and let's see. But if he doesn't show, and he had if I'm not mistaken, had
a great training camp last year in preseason, yeah.
And then he's inactive almost all year. So this is one where it's there's no downside to carrying guys now. There just isn't.
You owe him the money anyway. His is guaranteed.
Right.
It's still his rookie contract, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they sunk a second-round pick into him. I hope they can get something out of him. He had 2.5 sacks as a rookie, none since. Last year he played a career-low 12% of the defensive snaps. I don't mean to just trash the guy, but I have the question on here for you guys. Is this Chris Ballard's biggest draft bust that he's made with the Colts?
Didn't he draft Quincy Wilson, or was that the last year of
that was his first draft, okay. Quincy Wilson, but at least Quincy Wilson played.
Was he a 2 or 3, Quincy?
He was a 2.
He was a 2. He was higher. He was like
he played. You're right. He played.
Yeah. He did play. You're not wrong. He never did anything while he played.
He never did anything.
I don't know.
So
I think it's very similar. Yeah.
Well, but he gets a nod because he played, which tells you where Ben Banigou is.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't played.
It's a good point.
Much of anything.
Fair enough.
So here we are trashing. but again, he will be given a chance to finally, and the fact that he's still here. Remember they cut bait with Terrell Basham in year 2.
I think it was year 2.
I believe.
Not year 3. I think it was 2.
They showed great patience with Teray because of the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
But no player has had so much time to emerge than Ben Banigou.
And to my knowledge, it's not like he's been hurt either. He's been healthy.
One of my biggest complaints, as we continue to pile on, is that if you've got an athletic linebacker / defensive end, special teams, chase around on special teams, and he hasn't even done that.
Is there nothing he can do there? Yeah.
So hey, he's a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of good kids in my neighborhood that you don't want to see playing, but
right.
the kid, this is his time. We'll know in a month whether a new scheme and a new coach can turn the light on.
And when
just 16% of the special team snaps last year for Banigou. So actually more than on defense, percentage-wise. But the other guy I kind of wanted to talk about before we start to move on here, Affetti Odinigbo that they signed in the offseason.
I hate that they signed him.
Just the name?
Because I'm going to have trouble spelling the two.
These
now.
jerks.
It's hard enough to spell one right. Now I've got 2.
I think he could kind of come in, especially if Taekwon Lewis is still recovering from the patellar tendon. I did a little bit of research, and it says the recovery time for a tear of the patellar tendon is about 6 to 12 months. That's a wide range, so he could be back around the beginning of the season. He could, it could take him the whole year.
He'll probably start on. He'll be on PUP, I would assume, to start camp and the season.
So that'll give chances to guys like Banigou or Odinigbo. And Odinigbo had 7 sacks in 2019 with the Vikings. He started 15 games the year after in 2020. Only had about 3 sacks that year. But he's somebody who's actually done something in the league. So I think he could be a solid rotational player. I'm interested in how that shakes out throughout camp.
After that, you got Brian Cox Jr., Cameron Klein, Scott Patchen kind of rounding out the depth chart. Over the past couple years, the Colts have kept either 4 or 5. Then last year, they kept 6 defensive ends, actually. But it's always been about 9 or 10 just on the defensive line in general when you kind of combine defensive end and defensive tackle. So you can expect somewhere between, most likely, 4 or 5 here on the outside. And 5 is kind of the obviously the nice.
5. Because we can get into it in a second, but I kind of feel like the defensive end depth is better than the defensive tackle depth.
Well, one thing that was always helped in the past is when you had Taekwon Lewis, is he was sort of both.
Right,
Same
and
with
Danico
Dio.
Autry was that before, too.
And
Dio
Dio
kind
can
of
be
is
that
as well.
guy, too.
Yes.
So that's why they love the flexibility. Some guys are ends or tackles. DeForest Buckner's a tackle. But the guys that can go, both positions, it really helps you when you've got to have 53. They're only going to carry, I would assume, 2 quarterbacks. So that opens up a position. But it's always dicey, offensive line, defensive line. It's always dicey how many you keep.
Now, when you look at the defensive tackle on the inside, there's no debate who the top 2 are between DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. And Stewart has earned his second contract in the NFL. Guys who are, what was he, a 5th-round pick? Either 4th or 5th-round picks don't always get that.
4th rounder.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might be right. Yeah, now that you say it, it makes sense. At Albany State, nice HBCU program there in Georgia, Albany, Georgia. Those 2 guys are great. Like when you look across the NFL, and they're certainly a top 10 defensive tackle pairing across the league. And Buckner is certainly the cream of the crop of those 2. But I don't want to disrespect what Grover's done either, because his contributions in the middle have been very important. He's a great run defender. He's a big part of why, Chap, you mentioned earlier, the Colts under Matt Eberflus were a top 4 rush defense in the NFL during his time here. But having those 2 as just your base, and we'll get to the depth in a second, like Joe said, as having those 2 as your starters, as your base, as guys who are both veterans, you got to feel really good about heading into training camp.
And they're 28.
Both.
Ngakwe's 27. So this is a very experienced but not old defense.
Yeah.
Which is really good. And again, Joe can kind of break down the depth here, but that's going to be an issue. Is the depth at tackle? Is who do you have that you really as that 3rd or 4th guy? If it won't be Taekwon, it might be Dio, but they need one of these young guys, really young guys, to step up.
And that's, Joe, perhaps why the Colts went out and drafted 2 different defensive tackles just this past late April. First, they got Eric Johnson, the 5th-round pick out of Missouri State, and then they went and got Curtis Brooks, the 6th-round pick out of Cincinnati. So there are some snaps to be had, we think, in the center of that defense, and it could be a very intriguing position to watch out of training camp. I know people don't they look at more glamour positions, like you'll watch wide receiver and cornerback and those battles, of course, but it might be really interesting to see what these guys can do against some of the offensive linemen, and if any one of them starts to make a name for themselves out in Westfield, they would just vault to the backup role right there. And we've seen in the past those backup defensive tackles have gotten their opportunities during game time.
Yeah, and there's not like an established or a veteran really that's played a whole lot behind them. Maybe R.J. McIntosh had 2 sacks for the Giants in 2019. That's about the most you're going to get when you look through this here. Johnson's kind of the guy who reminds me a little bit of Grover Stewart, kind of a smaller school guy. Missouri State, he's the first Missouri State player drafted in more than a decade. 6'4", 299, ran a 4.86 40-yard dash. That's quite impressive for a man of his size. But Brooks is the guy who had the production at a higher level program in Cincinnati. 7.5 sacks last year with the Bearcats, 43 quarterback pressures, 90.4 PFF pass rush grade. So he's a little smaller, though, 6'2", 287, but it'll be interesting to see. Is the guy with the more athletic upside, does he kind of propel himself and be ready for year one? Or is Brooks maybe a little bit more polished, a little bit more ready to contribute immediately for this team? That'll be a fun battle to keep an eye on.
Definitely. And the more I learned about Curtis Brooks after the Colts drafted him, the more intrigued I was. And it's obviously the production is a big deal. And I think he had a couple of good special teams plays too, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember if it was him for sure, but I thought it was him that had at least one block. That might have been Eric Johnson now that I'm thinking about it again. But yeah, those 2 I think are certainly intriguing to watch. And over the past 3 years, the Colts have kept 5 defensive tackles every year. So it's been 5-5-5. I mean, if you look at Buckner, Stewart, Johnson, Brooks, that's 4. You mentioned R.J. McIntosh. Chris Williams spent the majority of his first 2 seasons on the Colts practice squad. He's on the roster right now. So he's another guy who just knows the area, at least, if not the scheme, because everyone's learning this new scheme.
You won't get lost.
What's that?
You won't get lost on the way to practice.
Yeah. He'll
Or the
make
way
it
to
out.
the airport.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, one or the other. And then Kavion Patton in his first year, undrafted free agent out of Texas State. Always got to look out for those undrafted free agents. Somebody comes in and is a surprise. But Joe, you have some key stats from the defensive line that you listed out here. So if you want to dive into either of those, now's the time to do so.
Yeah, I saw on Mike's articles, I think you've got every position out now, Mike, except maybe special teams?
Special teams is tomorrow.
Gotcha. But this is Fox59.com and CBS4Indy.com. You know that Buckner is the first Colts defensive tackle to lead the team in sacks in 2 consecutive seasons. Ever?
I had to double check ever.
So no defensive tackle, even for 1 year, has led the team
No,
in
back-to-back years.
Back-to-back years.
Yep.
Gotcha. Yeah, he had 7 last year and then 9.5 the year before that. Really, obviously, Buckner's the cream of the crop. Grover Stewart's really good, but you can't expect these guys to play every snap, let alone every game. I mean, It's natural to expect them to at least miss a game or 2. So who wins that third defensive tackle job is going to be key. And maybe that third defensive tackle isn't on the roster yet. We've seen these late pickups. There might be some cuts. There might be a veteran that the team adds. So that's going to be a kind of under-the-radar position that could come up big for the Colts this year.
And if you want to get your best players on the field, I'd imagine that they bring Dio inside at some point, because you just can't keep him on the bench at all times, or you put Taekwon out there in the middle. Like we've said in the past, he has that flexibility to go back and forth too. So some of those defensive ends could see more time in the middle.
That's
as
a
well.
good point.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to keep mentioning what they've kept in the past, whether 9 or 10 defensive linemen or whatever. And I'll keep bringing up that you get 15 guys on the practice squad. So guys who don't make the roster, a couple of these guys, or at least 2 or 3 of these guys, are without somebody from another team that's cut. They're going to be on that practice squad. And you can protect 3, I think it is, on a Tuesday. So the roster, it's much bigger than 53, and these guys were very, very active at using practice squad last year. But so it will give you some flexibility. But this is, again, tackle's another area that somebody that we don't know needs to step up and give us a reason to believe in them.
Let's head to linebacker. The Colts have at the top, once again, as is the starting unit, one of the most experienced linebacking groups in the NFL. And you like this group. You have to, because you have Darius Leonard, who is ranked the 5th best linebacker in the NFL for Madden. We're not getting into Madden ratings here today. We might touch on it later, but in another podcast. Just don't have time today. Too much to get into. But with Darius, Chap, we were talking before we came on. He's got to be the lead story just coming into camp in general for all the Colts. Just his health. How good is he? When will he be on the field? How much does he need to be on the field in a new defensive scheme before the season starts? But this is yet again another off-season surgery for Darius Leonard. He came back and was fantastic last year, had another all-pro year, but you just don't want it to catch up to him, and that's the fear. And every time somebody says back surgery or even back procedure is probably what they're saying. We'll say surgery. That has to raise some red flags going into another 17-game football season. Yeah,
because again, we went through this last year. As Darius went through this last year, he had the ankle surgery, was supposed to take care of it, and it didn't. That ankle bothered him all year, and he told us it did. And at some point, it kept weighing. Remember when he said that he opened up about how it taxed him mentally and physically. He lost his love for the game, and back surgery, I just can't buy procedure. I mean, it's surgery.
Yeah.
If someone with a medical license is telling me the difference, I've taken the approach that if they pierce your skin, it's not a procedure. You know, so but it's a question. I'm not going to be shocked if he opens up camp on PUP. They've given us no reason. There've been no updates at all.
Now, remind me again, if he opens on PUP, would that influence his ability to play like week 1?
No. If you open camp on PUP, then they can take you off PUP the next day.
Right.
So
But if you open the season on PUP, you have to miss at least 6 weeks.
I thought it had changed to 4 weeks. They've changed. They've changed it,
But
but
it's a certain number of games.
Dio opened up the season on PUP last year, and I thought it was 8 games.
I'll look that up here.
Yeah, but yeah, it like Taekwon Lewis will be on PUP. I just think he will be. But if you open open camp on PUP, it's just you're not ready to practice,
Right.
and it's precautionary. And then as soon as you're ready to play, you're activated. But he didn't practice during training camp last year, did he? Much.
Darius started practicing after he got his contract last year. Remember that?
Right. But you talked about how this is an experienced group. Darius, Okereke, and Franklin, 170 games, 106 starts by the group. The other 6 players, 4 of them are rookies, and I'll take you out to dinner if you can name the 4 rookies. It's Dorman, Weatherford, which you can.
My guy, Hamilton Heights.
Ryan and Skolaski.
I think it's Doman, right?
Doman.
Okay,
fine,
Doman.
yeah.
Okay,
You can't name him.
and I can't.
He's got the names right in front of him.
But then they signed Brandon King, a free agent.
Yep.
He's had two defensive snaps because he's a special team standout. So it's once again it's linebacker has gotten to be a strange position because you're in nickel so much that Zaire Franklin wasn't on the field a ton. He started, I think, 15, or maybe he started all 17 last year. But you're in nickel so much that one of your linebackers come off. But the depth at linebacker, you get past EJ Speed, and it's very, very concerning.
Yeah, what they need, Joe, they definitely need some special teams help from last year with Matthew Adams is gone and Jordan Glasgow they cut as well. You look at a guy like Brandon King, you figure he has a good shot to make the roster, and after that it's going to be what rookie impresses you here in camp that's probably going to earn that last spot available there.
I think King will because they brought him in with a specific role in mind,
Right.
which was to play special teams, similar to Glasgow when they drafted him. Just real quick on the PUP, you were right, Mike. Over the offseason, they actually changed it from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, so you were all over that. And yeah, Franklin's a guy who, he per Pro Football Reference had 11 starts last year, but he played more snaps on special teams than defense. 200 on defense, 350 on special teams. I think EJ Speed's another standout on special teams. I think Weatherford and Doman, I could see there being a decent chance that they both make the team. Obviously, they'll be competing, but I think at least one of them makes the team. I know you were high on Weatherford. He was on your breakouts list.
That's right.
But both of them are pretty.
He was very active in the workouts that we saw during the offseason. He was. Mm-hmm. Make of that what you will, but he was.
And he's got the athletic ability. 6'4", 224, ran a 4.60 40-yard dash, 36-inch vertical. He's an athlete who can make the team on special teams and hopefully develop into more of that. Maybe
Hamilton Heights? Is that?
That's right. Go Huskies.
Hamilton Heights, and then played at Miami of Ohio. But
The real Miami.
Yes.
That's right. But I really like this linebacker group from top to bottom. Zaire Franklin's a really good third linebacker, especially when most of the time you only have 2 on the field anyway. EJ Speed's my guy.
That's right.
And he had 9 tackles in his first career start last year against Arizona when everybody was out with COVID. Mm-hmm. So Speed, Franklin, and then Doman and or Weatherford, I think, give you some pretty good depth.
Yeah, over the past 3 years, the Colts have kept 6, and then last year 2 years ago was 7 linebackers, and then 6 in 2021. What the heck did I do here? Okay, sorry,
They won't keep 7.
No, they won't keep 7 this year. It'll be 6. It's got to be 6. So it'll be Darius, it'll be Okereke, it'll be Franklin, it'll be Speed, and then there's 2 more. You figure Brandon King will be 1, and then either Weatherford or Doman, if not at Forrest Ryan or James Skalski. If they really do surprise there. So, and then
and
probably
again,
1 or 2 more of them make the practice squad.
And again, maybe this is a spot like Joe's mentioned, and people shouldn't forget the fact that when other teams start cutting players, maybe they've got a glut at a certain position that you don't. Ballard is always looking to add, reliable depth at positions.
Was last year the first year that kind of broke the streak of undrafted free agents for the Colts?
Yes, it was.
I think one of these 2 linebackers, Doman or Weatherford, starts the new streak this year.
There we go. And it's going to be Sterling, like I said, one of my breakout players for 2022. Hey, some key stats for the linebackers. Darius Leonard, since he was drafted in 2018, is second in the NFL in tackles, only to Bobby Wagner. He's second in the NFL in forced fumbles with 17 forced fumbles, only to TJ Watt. Third in fumble recoveries, trailing only Justin Houston and Von Bell, and has the most interceptions among linebackers in the league with 11. And hey, that number is good enough for even 11th in the entire NFL with guys who get thrown at a whole lot more than he does. So if you're looking for playmakers on defense in the league, Darius Leonard has got to be at or near the top of your list. He's the leader. He's the guy as long as he is healthy. As long as he is healthy, that is the big question as the new season comes around for this linebacker group. Joe asks, is this linebacker group better than last season's? I would say maybe, because if Darius can be healthier, then maybe. But he still was great last year. Okereke is going to get a year older and a year better. I think it hinges on Okereke, because I think Zaire is what he is, a tremendous player out of Syracuse University that you could always rely upon for anything and everything. Obviously, EJ Speed's probably going to be better, I would think. If not, he has kind of established himself as a really good backup, which you love to have. And then what do you lose when Jordan Glasgow and Matthew Adams are gone? I don't know how much you lose with that. So we'll see. Like, especially if you bring in Brandon King.
They were both special teams players.
Yeah, and you bring in another longtime special teams player in the league in King. So I would say that there's certainly the potential for it to be better if indeed that these linebackers can find their role, Joe, in Gus Bradley's system.
I agree, and I've kind of expressed how optimistic I am about the Doman and Weatherford to make the team and maybe become something. So I agree. I think the linebackers will get better. Kind of, no point in having that question. Obviously, defensive end got better with Yannick. Defensive tackle's about the same, maybe. But I think this linebacker group has the potential to be better. And a group that's going to be much, much better next year is cornerback.
No doubt. When you sign Stephon Gilmore, a former defensive player of the year, a guy who has made 5 Pro Bowls, in his career, you got to expect something better to happen. And you don't expect, again, my experience in Philadelphia, you don't expect a Nnamdi Asomugha situation where he gets his bag and then he's not even getting his bag, in a free agency context.
$23 million.
Yeah, $23 million for 2 years. That's it's
pretty affordable.
Yeah, it's a good veteran signing if you're the Colts. No one else wanted to give him anything longer, and he'll be 32 years old in September when the season begins. So no one wants to pay a 32-year-old cornerback for more than that. It's a fair contract. He had a quad injury last year, so that might have had people shy away from him too. Cost him 5 games in 2020, the first 7 games in 2021.
Yeah, the injury was actually 2 years ago.
Right, yes it was.
Right.
So he had to recover from it and then get back on the field. But having Gilmore on the edge to pair up with Kenny Moore as your 1-2 punch chap, I mean, that's a pretty good punt. Not a lot of teams in the NFL could say they have 2 Pro Bowl cornerbacks, guys who have made Pro Bowls in their career.
I'd love to be in the room, or at least know their rationale on Chris Ballard told us that Gilmore was always on their radar and they were waiting for things. And keep in mind that he wasn't here when they got rid of Rock Ya-Sin.
Right.
It was a month earlier. The cost of getting you a pass rusher was a corner. As we've talked, I'll do that every day, unless it's just an elite corner. I'm going to take a pass rusher. So again, is he the long-term answer? Well, no. But in the NFL, you can't always have long-term answers. Sometimes it's a 2 or 3 year answer, and if you get 2 good years out of Gilmore, they got 1 good year out of Xavier Rhodes. They just did. He was injuries and whatever last year, so he just adds what they haven't had since Vontae Davis was in his Pro Bowl. And Vontae Davis, well, it didn't end well here. He was pretty good.
At his best, he was great.
He had that one stretch of consecutive games without giving up time. He was good.
Yeah.
He was good. And Gilmore, sometimes, Matt Ryan, wasn't he MVP in 16?
Yeah.
Well, and Gilmore was Defensive Player of the Year in 19. It's not like 10 years ago. So I think this guy's still got high level to play. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to mix zone and man. And he can do both. He likes to get up in guys, as he said, get up in guys' grills and misdirect them. So he gives them an outside guy that they really haven't had since Vontae. And pairing him with Kenny Moore to see how they continue to maximize all the things that he can do, and he does everything. And then as you got on this list is Isaiah Rodgers is kind of the wild card. Is he ready to be the guy opposite Gilmore? And if he is, but it's a pretty good threesome.
With Kenny Moore in particular, his contract situation still looming. We talked about that, I think, at a good deal this offseason with no real development since then. No need to go too much further into it. But, Joe, certainly something that we're going to be looking out for these first couple weeks of camp. Is Kenny Moore out there, and is there any discussions with his contract?
Yeah. And one of the questions I have is, do you guys think he's going to get a new deal before the season? I have a hard time seeing that with 2 years still left.
They might restructure something. I would find it hard to believe he gets a new deal.
Incentives or
I can see restructuring to where you move. I think he's due $13 or $14 million over the last 2 years. Move some of next year into this year. Guarantee it. Players love the word guarantee. It's just we talked. It's so hard to address somebody with 2 years to go. We overpaid you early. So now you got to do this. And keep in mind that he didn't hold out of off-season workouts. They're voluntary. The old Edger James term. I know what voluntary means.
I may not have graduated, but I know what voluntary means.
Right. And now he if I remember right, for the voluntary or for the mandatory work, he started to practice, then he felt a twinge, and then they pulled him out. So, but he was there.
Right.
So it's a totally different DEFCON level if you don't show up for training camp. Minicamp and OTAs, that's not a holdout. It's not. Training camp's a holdout if he does that. I just don't think Kenny Moore would do that. I don't know what he thinks he would achieve by having that line in the sand. Now, maybe I'm totally wrong, but I would kind of hope the team sort of addresses an unfair situation because he is underpaid. He's underpaid. But I just don't see him getting a new deal. I can see them messing around with the last 2 years.
Isaiah Rodgers, Brandon Faison, 3 and 4. Those are, you feel pretty good about that with Isaiah Rodgers having a fairly decent 2021 season as just a second-year guy. Does he take a step forward this year? Does Faison take on more of a role in three cornerback sets? That'll be intriguing to watch. I think just the snap count between those two. Tony Brown, Anthony Chesley, Chris Wilcox, Alexander Myers also on the roster right now. Over the past years, the Colts, last year they had 7 cornerbacks, but that's because they only had 3 safeties, which was fewer than they usually do coming out of camp. Between these two, again, just like on the defensive line, you kind of combine for 10 between safety and cornerback, which is what the Colts have aimed for over the past 4 years. Every year, it's been 10. It's been 5 and 5 or 6 and 4, and then 7 and 3. So it's going to be some combination of that probably to get to 10 guys total. And this secondary, Joe mentions key stat, which I kind of touched on, features the first pair of Pro Bowlers the Colts have ever had since they relocated.
I hope I didn't put that wrong in my story. It's the first pair of Pro Bowlers. It's only the second time they've had 2 Pro Bowlers. The other was Vontae and Mike Adams.
Okay.
In whenever it was at 14 or 15.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't happen often.
How about cornerbacks? First pair of Pro Bowl cornerbacks. We'll go with that.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll amend the stat and be correct.
Right,
just a quick tweak. There we are. Is this group better than last season? All of us say yes immediately.
Obviously,
it has to. With Gilmore on top instead of what Xavier Rhodes was last year, which was unfortunately not good.
Or Rock, you said.
And Rock, yeah. I think Rock was really the top corner.
Yeah.
But I think I'm really excited about Isaiah Rodgers. I think he has a lot of potential. It'll be interesting to see because Faison comes in with a step up. He's played all 4 years in the league under Gus Bradley's defense. Gus Bradley has stated, he wants to play a lot of press, whether it's zone or man, he wants to press. And Faison's much bigger, 6'2", 200 pounds. The Colts have Isaiah Rodgers listed at 5'10", 170. So how effective will Isaiah be pressing? That'll be interesting to see. Maybe Faison kind of gets more time at the start of the year, but I just feel like Rodgers is a more talented corner.
But it's nice to have Faison be your fallback.
Totally.
Exactly. I mean, this is a really, really the most solid top 4 corners I can remember for the Colts team in a long time.
And you got to have 3 that are good and 4 that you can get by with because you play so much coverage.
Yep.
So this gives them the option to do that.
Now, let's go to safety. You got Julian Blackmon, who by all accounts, surprised to be out there and was running around. And
If you didn't know he had the injury, you wouldn't know it.
nope, not at all. He was out in minicamp and running around with the defense. So
Gotta love to hear that.
Exactly. He tore his Achilles last October, but he looks good. He spoke to us, was in as good a spirits as you could possibly imagine. And that's just who he is as a guy. So he's back. You have the retirement of Kari Willis. So the other safety spot is going to be a competition between Rodney McLeod and Nick Cross, the rookie out of Maryland. And that's another really, I think, intriguing camp battle.
First experience.
Yeah, exactly. And McLeod is a good veteran. I mean, he's 11 years in the league. He has 123 starts. He's still 32. He's not like 34 or 35. So even
He's Mike Adams.
Yeah, he is very much so.
He's probably a better Mike Adams coming in.
And so you can't immediately say, well, the Colts love Cross, which they certainly do because they traded away a pick next year to go back and get him.
And now we know why they did.
Yes, because Kari Willis retired.
Correct.
Yes. So, I mean, you're watching the draft, and you're like, what are the Colts doing trading away for Nick Cross by maybe drafting Rodney Thomas late, too? Why are they devoting so many resources to safety? Well, now we do know. But that battle, I think Rodney McLeod, Joe, might have a leg up right now. But Cross is going to find some playing time himself as well, I'd imagine, in the secondary, just because of the physical tools that he has that made him a third-round pick and what the Colts said would have been a second-round pick after another year of seasoning next year.
Yeah, if I had to put money on it, I'd say McLeod starts the year as a starter. Cross kind of gets some snaps here and there to, kind of give him a break, especially in obvious run situations. Cross is a little bigger and heavier, I believe, and all the reports, scouting reports, is he can just knock the hell out of you.
They mentioned Bob Sanders as a comparison, and then you back off a little bit.
Let's slow down.
It's like Chuck Pagano calling Malik Hooker Ed Reed. That didn't go so well.
Chris Ballard said, let's back off.
He's like, hold on, guys. Whoa.
Yeah. But Cross doesn't even turn 21 until September, so it's quite an age difference there. I think the veteran experience, the craftiness of McLeod will get him on the field early, but I'm excited for what Cross can become. I mean, 212-pound safety who can run a 4.34 40-yard dash is pretty exciting.
Yeah. After those three, you got Rodney Thomas, who I mentioned, the seventh-round pick out of Yale, Armani Watts going into his fifth year in the league, Will Redmond, and Trevor Denbo. Wasn't there a guy also, Joe, who was in the program they have with Europe? Was he a safety too?
Marcel Debo.
Yeah.
I don't think he's technically on the 90-man
linebacker?
roster, but I can't remember if he was a safety or a linebacker. It's just a name that I remember.
He was in the secondary. I
Yeah.
think he played. Yeah, he might have played corner.
Okay, you're right. I think he was either a safety or a corner, but
I left him off. That's a good
but
point.
he's not on the roster. So you did not do anything wrong. I was just like I was like, Joe's crying over here. You will.
Well, he won't he be the asterisk player? You can carry him.
Yes.
He doesn't count against the 90, I don't believe.
Right.
And then he can be an extra practice squad player.
Yes. So that's
Great athlete.
Yes. That's really neither here nor there when we're talking about the roster, but you'll see him out there at training camp, which is so.
I mean, maybe he makes that.
And if he makes the roster, he makes the roster.
That would be something truly special if he did. But interested to see Rodney Thomas and what exactly he is. I'm always intrigued by those late round guys because they rarely do anything significant, but they can really develop. I'm obviously going to refer to my guy, Zaire Franklin, as a guy who came in and established himself a role and then has become a team captain, really a foundational person for the culture of this team and 1/3 of offense, defense, special teams. They always have that potential. And
well, he and Matt Adams were 7th-round picks.
They were, both of them.
And Adams stuck here 4 years.
Yep.
Isaiah Rodgers was a 6th-round pick, and now he has a chance to start. Got 3 picks last year.
You just have to hit on those guys. Because when you're going to be paying so top-heavy at positions, you've got to hit on these guys and maybe really hit on it. Again, we talked about with Zaire getting a second contract. For a 7th-round pick, that's incredible. Good for him. But you got to hit on him to sort of counterbalance the top of the budget.
Yeah. So with this group, as we mentioned, they're probably going to combine for the Colts for 10 players in the secondary total. At safety, that's likely somewhere between 3 and 5, and the 3 that are locked in: Blackman, McLeod, and Cross. After that, you got Rodney Thomas, the rookie. Armani Watts has 5 years in the league. I'd say that he's
a special teamer.
He's another special team player that was. So how will Bubba Ventrone, how much weight will
for
he
someone to be the George Odom, who was an all-pro special teams player just 2 years ago, and came in last year and intercepted Josh Allen in Buffalo. Like he came in and filled in admirably.
Very well.
I thought so at safety when he was called upon to do so. So is he with San Francisco too? I think he might be on somewhere. Him and Komoko are both over there now. Yeah, just looking for somewhere with more opportunity, which I can't blame him for going, because I think there was maybe still some sore feelings about his restricted free agent tag 2 years ago. But nevertheless, they need people back there in case injuries happen. And when you get past those top three, there's not a lot of experience. But again, if you're looking across the NFL and you go 4 or 5 deep in the secondary, that's very rare. So
Odom got a 3-year, $9.5 million deal. So good for him.
Good for him.
Yeah,
wasn't going to get it here.
No, definitely not. And so he'll definitely get a look over there for some more playing time. So that's the Colts defense. And we've gone down the offense. We've gone down the defense. If we had a whole week to go down to special teams, we certainly wouldn't. I don't know if we'd find a way to fill 60 minutes, as we always do. But Rodrigo Blankenship.
We can touch on special teams next
little bit
week.
next
Kind of
week.
top training camp battles.
Yeah, because there is a training camp battle there in special teams, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, and definitely some guys there as kick returners with Naheem Hines and Isaiah Rodgers. Yeah, that can be dangerous guys back there. So yeah, we'll touch about that in the future. Maybe we'll get into Madden ratings next week, but there will definitely be camp storylines too. And Mike Chappell's ideal training camp will be nothing like last year. Is that correct?
You need a little bit, but every day. And when it starts off by the way, our coach is out with COVID, and then again one day after the other, it's Wentz, and then it's Quentin and
with ankle injuries here and there, and then Eberflus gets COVID or he's a close contact. Something.
And then they're one day
Darius is sitting out,
and then with the quarterback out, we believe in Jacob Eason, and he
T.Y. Hilton got hurt.
Oh, T.Y. Hilton, the last day of practice, he goes down, and we're watching it, and you're thinking, holy smokes!
Yep.
But he gets up, and then he has surgery, so it's not a good thing. You want camp uneventful, and I could deal with that. Just maybe a little bit of news, but not every.
Maybe a little eventful, but not like last year eventful. So we do hope that you'll stop by training camp in Westfield Grand Park. Is going to be
one thing with training camp. In the last couple of years, last year wasn't so restricted, but when this is the chance for fans to really get out and schmooze, I guess, with players. Because players, by and large, that they enjoy the time, and they're after practice, I'm guessing they'll have an autograph tent put up. But the big thing is that the players will come over to the bleachers and spend 20 minutes signing autographs. They just do, and it's the time. If you're a season ticket holder, you go to games, you see these players on the sideline with their helmets. This is when you get a chance to really see them and see what they look like. And it's not like baseball where they got caps on. This is such a great time, and it's one of the reasons, not the only one, but it's one of the reasons the Colts remain away from the complex for practice, because they want interaction with their fan base. This is how you build your fan base, and I've always seen that as really invaluable between a team and its fan base.
And I'll tell you this, they're going to be excited right off the bat because they've gone 2 years without doing that stuff. They're really close face-to-face, back and forth. So if you can get out for one of those first practices, they're going to be, I think, a lot of guys out there willing and able and excited to see the fans, to be with the fans. Because like think about yourself, wherever you were when those first couple trips outside of COVID, when that was kind of past for you, and you're going out to this place or that place, or going to the lake, you're going on vacation, and
just to a restaurant.
Exactly. Like, this is a return to normal, really, for the Colts. That first day with the fans is going to be out there, so it's going to be really exciting. I think for them, it should be great. Obviously, exciting for the fans. It always is. So you're going to get some guys, I think, who are really happy to see the fans out there.
And it's free admission. Now you have to go to Colts.com and get a ticket. You need a ticket to get in, but it's free.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And they got Colts. They got Colts City and all that stuff, which, when you got young kids, take them out there and let them go jump on the things and throw and kick and all that. So it is a good time to get out if your schedule allows.
Yeah, go meet Yannick Ngakoue. He might let you take him out for dinner. Have you guys seen him on Twitter?
He's been lobbying for everything. Anywhere, where can I take my dog?
That's
cool
great.
Stuff.
Engaging 100% with the fans.
Yeah, good. Glad to see. And we'll see a lot over the next couple weeks. You can always follow us here on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. Subscribe, get us delivered to your podcast listening device whenever we drop. Follow us on Twitter as well at Colts Blue Zone. Individually, we are Mike Chappell at mchappell51, Joe Hopkins at Roto Street, Joe Screet, Roto Screet. That's not it. And Dave Griffiths at Dave G_sports. We appreciate you listening. Check out Mike Chappell's work online, fox59.com, CBS4Indy.com as well. And we'll see you next week as training camp begins on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.